Hi everyone, welcome to part 2 of the 0500 directed writing question videos. If you have not watched part 1, I would suggest that you do that first so that this will make more sense for you. And also, if you are a year 11 student and you are doing this as revision, I would suggest that you go through the passage first on your own, try it out, and then come back to watch this to do a little comparison so that it will be more effective that way. Okay, so pause here and then come back after. Yeah, okay, so moving on, and let's have a look at the question. Yeah, so just a quick recap. In the first video, I went through the questions. I went through the question with you guys, and if you remember the 3 prompts, you're supposed to pick out description of the journey into the canyon. We're supposed to describe the working and living condition of the settlement, and then of course your prompt number 3 is the hopes and dreams of what's going to happen next, describing that to your husband or your wife. Okay, so we are going to go through the passage to pick out information for the prompts to be able to write out. If you remember, the format is to write a letter to your husband or wife and answering the 3 prompts. Okay, so shall we begin? Okay, so it's important to annotate, to highlight stuff that you think can answer, that is information for A1, A2, or A3. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because I think it's more important about me giving you this information as fast as possible. Okay, all right, so let's begin. The prospect of gold. The writer describes a visit to a remote canyon which was once the scene of a gold rush. So, of course, reading this, you would know that this passage is written in modern day, whereas you are supposed to play the role of a prospector 150 years ago. Okay, so meaning you're extracting information from a modern piece to be able to use as a prospector 150 years ago. So some adaptation is required. Remember, yeah, it's adaptation. Okay, so it's gold rush, obviously, so we know that this is the gold rush. So let me just do a quick highlight here. Okay. All right, and then we have, of course, this is a remote canyon. All right, so what does that mean? If it's a remote canyon, so meaning the journey into this remote canyon would have not been very easy. You would have had to travel quite far on, well, I would say there would not even be actual roads leading into it. And it being remote, meaning it's in a pretty secluded place, far from any community, so that could actually be quite intimidating or difficult. So that's something that you will want to include. Okay, so of course, how you would write it in your letter. You are a husband or wife writing to your partner. Think also whether you want to exaggerate this or not. Most likely you will not want to scare your husband or wife, right? So I think in the writing I would write, of course, something like how the journey was not very easy, or the journey was fairly difficult, and it took quite a number of days because it is maybe a couple of 100 kilometers, mentioned something like that, and we had to travel by foot and also by horseback and things like that. Okay, so that the examiner knows that you know that it's actually situated in a remote canyon. Okay, all right, so persuaded by the tour operator's invitation to take a trip into safety and luxury along the most dangerous road in the world. Okay, so most dangerous road in the world. You want to kind of take hint of this a little bit. It is dangerous. Why? It is not really mentioned yet, but there's something that you might want to put also in your letter, that traveling into it is a little bit treacherous. Why? Is because maybe you could say the paths are narrow or things like that. Okay, all right, so this would be part of A1, the journey into the canyon. Okay, I settled into the comfortable front seat of my 4-wheel drive vehicle and I fastened my safety belt. The air conditioning offered relief from the searing heat of this early spring day. Okay, so of course, this 4-wheel drive, this is modern day. if you are a prospector, you would not have a car or like a four-wheel drive at that, right? So of course you need to know that and adapt. So what could you actually use here? We are talking about searing heat, okay? The searing heat in early spring, okay? So you could mention in your letter that the path or the journey in was long, arduous, and also it did not help that it was actually pretty hot, maybe mentioning the temperature and whatnot, okay? And then we would be following the route taken by thousands of prospectors who had converged on the area from all over the world in feverish pursuit of the goal over 150 years ago. Of course, then this thousand of prospectors referred here is you. You are one of them, okay? So just for information. And then, but however, what are we talking about? Well, how could we use this though? So this is thousands of prospectors, you being one of them. This information should be relayed in the letter as, you could say, competition. It's not just me, but there are many people here, so I do have to be quite cautious, or I do have to be quite fast, things like that. If you've read any or watched any documentary about the prospectors a long time ago, it was actually pretty dangerous. Well, people literally got like gold fever and they can get quite mad and like territorial sort of thing. So having so many people, we're talking about it being pretty competitive. Yeah. Okay, so for 22 kilometers, we climbed steeply but speedily away from the town, along from the main highway, seeing no sign of life and habitation. So we're talking about having to climb quite steeply. So that's information that we can use. How is it dangerous? You could talk about perhaps how steep the climb actually is. Okay, and then also that there's no sign of life and habitation. Perhaps then maybe why? Is it located like pretty deep in the forest, for instance, having to maybe hike up the mountain to go into like some remote forest and things like that, okay? Or perhaps the river that you are actually hiking on, because gold is usually penned in the river, so having to hike to the top of the river, perhaps. Yeah. Okay, so suddenly we turned onto a track barely the width of our vehicle and stopped by two signs. So if the track is similar then and now, you could talk about how it is not very wide. So you do have to be then quite careful when you are traveling on the track. Okay. One bearing a skull and crossbones warned of the perils to come, and the other was an information board about the gold rush. In one photograph, a prospector was shown standing proudly on a piece of land he had staked out as his own. So the territorial thing, okay? And then if you want to be a little witty about this, you could talk about, to your partner in the letter, a reporter came to interview or to talk to some of us last month, and I think my picture is going to be in the newspapers or something like that. So it's just a little bit witty. The examiner will know that you truly understand this passage. Okay. All right. So this was the start of the road that had been hewn by hand out of solid rock by men suspended precariously on ropes over the precipice. They, like thousands of others, were desperate for access to the canyon, believing the rumor that untold riches were there for the taking. Wow. Okay, so what information do we have here? We are talking about some territorial issues. Okay, so this could be the working condition, that's A2, and then about how the road was actually hewn by hand out of solid rock. So you could be one of the men that actually was part of this endeavor to actually carve out the road literally, right? And then having to hang over the precipice. So this would mean that as you are traveling on this narrow path to get into the canyon, maybe some would have fallen over, and things like that, okay? And they, like thousands of others, were desperate for access to the canyon, believing the rumor of the untold riches for the taking. So this, what information I would get here would be desperate for access to the canyon. Again, I think it will be about the competition. Okay, so this I would put under perhaps like part of working conditions, lots of competition. Okay, having to constantly perhaps look over your shoulder for who would, try to pen for gold in like your little area sort of thing. Okay. Alright, so almost immediately we entered the canyon. The road turned so sharply round a rocky outcrop that we felt we were being thrown into the void. So this is something you could use, rocky outcrop, and then meaning like dangers, right? I looked back, the narrow gap through which we had just passed seemed to clang shut behind us. To our right, 200 meters below, the turquoise river writhed and frothed over the rocks. So we're talking about from a pretty high distance down you would fall. I mean, it's a pretty long distance down to fall, okay, if you did. Okay. And then it roars, echoing from side to side, so the river below. To our left, a sheer rock face loomed over us. So it's not just like this, but even like from here above it, you would see like the steep mountain sides. Okay, so that it can be quite intimidating. Maybe you can mention something like that. Okay, and then let's see. Ahead of us, a section of the track had been partially washed away by winter rains. This you could use, and you should, which is one of the dangers. And then, but how when you're walking, and then part of the route would actually be gone. Okay, so you literally have to carve one out that, and well, fighting the elements or having to battle the elements like winter rains. When you're out like that in a space where you are so vulnerable. So this will be part of the journey in. Okay, and then let's see. We could not turn around. It was as if we had been lured into a trap. We scrambled out and picked our way across the unstable ground while the driver slowly maneuvered the vehicle behind us with only centimeters to spare. There was no safety barriers, and the rusting, broken-backed carcass of a vehicle far below told its story. So this you can mention to your partner that I'm extremely careful, please don't worry. But of course, unfortunately, there are those, okay, who did not make it and they fell, into the river in the canyon and whatnot. Huh? Okay, so this is evidence of that. The road before us vanished into the distance, clinging for 9 kilometers to the side of the precipice. Okay, so let's see what else. Let's go further down. Okay, so eventually we dropped to the riverbed, reaching the end of the track and the site of the settlement long since deserted. So this is the site of the settlement that you were at. Okay, so it's at the end of the track. Okay, and then it was a barren place. The makeshift homes of the miners and a handful of women who lived there for a few years had vanished. So we're talking about makeshift homes. This is of course like an archaeological thing already now in modern day, but this is your home then 150 years ago. So your living conditions, pretty bare bones. You live in like makeshift homes. So describe that. Maybe you could tell your partner that, well, living conditions are very simple. We make do with tents and whatnot, but don't worry, it's still fairly comfortable. I don't really spend that much time in the home or in my room or whatnot sort of thing anyways, because I am spending most of my time out panning for gold. Okay, so this is how you could use the information for living condition. Yeah. Okay, and then exhaustion and broken dreams had led to the abandonment of the dwellings. A little bit of a clue here. There had been people who had come and abandoned the settlement, going back home, maybe empty-handed or not getting as much as they hoped for. But you decide on how you want to use this information, because you could talk about the exhaustion. You could explain to your partner that yes, there have been many people who have come and not made it, and but day to day or lately, there have been news that just above the river and whatnot, someone had found gold and things like that. So you feel motivated or compelled to want to continue to stay. It depends on how you want to use this information. Okay, so the winter floods had destroyed what was left. So you get things like winter floods. So this is something you could mention about living condition. Okay, and then all that remained was the courthouse. That was the museum. So there was even a courthouse. Why was there even a courthouse? Because court records showed that fights and dispute over claims of land were depressingly frequent. So this is something you could mention, that maybe tell your wife that, if you're the husband writing back, that I've not gotten myself into any of these silly fights and whatnot because it's pointless, but there are some people or some prospectors who are around you who are battling, and staking claims of land and fighting it out in court or something, battling it out in court. Yeah? And then, so let's see, this would be living condition, working condition, because this will answer A2. What is it like to actually live there at the settlement? So these are some of the things that you actually witness. Okay, so you will have to include that for A2. Yeah. So one old photograph showed a wagon heavily laden with supplies and drawn by 6 emaciated pack horses crossing a parched riverbed. In another, several young miners posed old before their time, staring dully into the camera, their faces lined and haggard. Okay, so you know that your supplies actually come in via a supplier who comes in with a wagon. So you could tell your partner, we do get supplies every couple of weeks. There will be the supplier coming in with what we need and whatnot. So fear not, okay, I get what I need, okay. And then of course you have this. You wouldn't tell your wife, of course, that you look haggard and lined and whatnot, sort of thing. You would say something like, using this information, you're out in the sun a lot, or you're out, out in the open quite a bit, but because you don't want to waste any time not doing this, you only stop to rest when you need to, or stop to eat, but you're like really trying very hard, okay, to actually do this. So maybe you can talk about how you have taken quite a beating from the weather, perhaps, or the sun and whatnot, but you wouldn't see it to the point of this though, because would you tell your partner that you are haggard and things like that? You know what I mean? So you use this information, but like I said, you need to adapt, okay? Adapt it. Okay, a little bit, yeah? Before we started our perilous return journey, we were given the opportunity to pen for goal ourselves. It was an arduous, repetitive task. Maybe this you can mention, working condition. It is pretty arduous and repetitive, but you're driven by, what you need to do for your family. We dipped the large sieves into the river, scooped up gravel, and swirled it around in the current, allowing the lighter material to be swept away. So this is how they pen for gold. Gold is heavy, and had it been present, it would have settled in the bottom. So this you will know how to you can use to describe your working conditions. This is what you do day on day. Yeah. Okay. Reason told us that we would discover none, but soon I succumbed to gold fever. The sieve swam before my eyes. I could feel my pulse racing. A kaleidoscope of fragmented fantasies about my imagined wealth swirled around in my head. I was only vaguely aware of the spasm in my back, the blouse cleaning damply, until with all energy sapping away and overcome by heat, I was forced to stop, my throat rasping dryly. What can you use here? Perhaps you can talk about how you witness people around you succumbing to gold fever, maybe like a old Robert something, yeah, poor dude, poor fella, gone a little bit batty or mad and something, yeah, because he has been here for quite a while, or things like that, yeah. Of course, you could choose to talk about it yourself, that you are going through some gold fever, but that would not quite make sense, so I would use this information to describe it for another prospector, okay? But you're using the information, right? Okay, and then of course you have this, maybe perhaps this, like pulse racing and things like that, so the excitement daily, and also this you can use for working condition. You, of course, do get spasms in your back, and energy can be sapping away quite quickly because of the heat and whatnot. You can use this a little bit. That the work is arduous, is repetitive, so the work is laborious. You would tell your partner the work is laborious. I I am bent over like for hours on end to pen for goal and things like that, but I've gotten quite used to it, so don't worry, I'm fine, I'm okay, all right and whatnot sort of thing. And then initially, perhaps I was overcome by a bit of exhaustion because I need to get used to the pace of working, the hours and whatnot, but I'm also gotten used to it now and things like that. Yeah. I was forced to stop and my throat has been dry, like most of these refugees from the civilized world where preceded the tourists had found no goal. My hopes that they are swept away by the current. At least I could stop after 20 minutes knowing that I would return to the comforts of civilization. So of course this is confirmation that life in the settlement indeed is not very easy. So this is something that you would share in your letter, but be careful. Like I kind of mentioned, when you're doing this, it's important to write your form, which is the letter now, in quite a realistic manner. So you will use this information and then adapt it somewhat, okay? And then make sure that you have enough A1s, A2s, and A3s. So if you notice, of course, everything that we picked out so far pretty much answers A1 and A2. So we don't quite have much on A3, except that many people actually traveled from all over to come and pen for gold. So that would be A3, you know, like hopes and dreams. This is something that it's not like an individual thing. That many people are actually trying to do the same. So from that, I would take it as like I'm part, okay, of this group of people who had maybe sold off some of your belongings in order to come and pursue this gold rush dream. To maybe these settlers or prospectors usually would go into this maybe like telling themselves, oh, I'll go for a year or 2 years and whatnot, strike it and then go back to my family and then we'll be able to have a comfortable life sort of thing. So that's kind of what A3 is supposed to be about. So you need to decide. I mean, like, do you want to write to your partner telling them that, hey, it's actually going really well, maybe it's even a good idea for you to come and join me so that we can both actually do this together and perhaps, you know, we could do more and get more quicker. Or if you're writing to tell your partner, just wait for me, I know I'm close, I'm almost there, you know I promised to come back. Of course, this is a little bit of things that you have to add in to make it natural. I know I promised that I'll be back in a year, and it is going to be a year, so all I ask is for you to wait for me for 6 more months, and I know I'll be able to get what I promise to do for our family, and then I'll be back and we'll be able to have a good life, something like that. So that will be like your A3. So there are quite a lot of possibilities. Okay, so you think about how you're going to do this. All right, so that's A1, A1s and A2s, lots of it in here, the ones that I've highlighted, and also what I've mentioned about how I would adapt the information, okay, for the letter, and also of course what I would add on for A3. Okay. Alright, so I'll end this here because I don't want the video to be too long. And then I guess what we'll do is in the third part of this is we'll use the information and then I'll try to write it out with a little bit, write it out a little bit with you guys, and then so that you can see how the information is actually adapted to your form. Okay, so I hope this was useful, and I'll see you guys in part 3. Thanks everybody.